Chapter 1, The Foundation Crumbles. You're not his daughter. The words hung in the sterile hospital air like a death sentence, and Sophia Chen felt her entire world tilt off its axis. She stared at the DNA test results in her stepmother's perfectly manicured hands, the numbers blurring through her tears. That's impossible, Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos of the emergency room where she'd given birth just hours before. Miranda's smile was sharp as broken glass. Oh, it's very possible, darling. The paternity test from your emergency transfusion was quite clear. Richard Chen is not your biological father. 22 years of love, security, and identity crumbled in an instant. Sophia's newborn son Lucas stirred in the bassinet beside her hospital bed, oblivious to the fact that his mother's world was imploding. She'd barely survived the difficult birth hours earlier, and now this. Where is he? Sophia's voice cracked. Where's my father? He's not your father, Miranda repeated with obvious satisfaction. And he's gone. Left the moment I showed him the results. Turns out your precious mother was quite the actress, carrying on an affair while playing the devoted wife. The rest of the conversation blurred together, Miranda's cold explanation that Sophia was no longer welcome in the Chen household, that her belongings were already packed, that the hospital wanted her discharged immediately due to insurance complications. Richard Chen, who had raised her since she was 12, had walked away without a single word of goodbye. The next few hours passed in a blur of terror and desperation. Sophia begged the nurses for more time, called friends who suddenly weren't available, tried reaching Richard's cell phone only to discover she'd been blocked. As the storm outside grew violent, she found herself standing in the hospital parking lot at midnight, wearing nothing but a thin hospital gown and a borrowed jacket, clutching her newborn son. The rain started as a drizzle, then escalated to a downpour. Sophia stumbled through the empty streets, her surgical incision screaming with every step, Lucas crying against her chest. She had $43 in her purse and nowhere to go. By the time she reached the alley behind the old church on 5th Street, her strength was gone. She collapsed against a dumpster, shielding Lucas with her body as the rain soaked through her clothes. Her baby's cries grew weaker, more desperate. I'm sorry, she whispered against his tiny head. I'm so sorry, baby. Mama doesn't know what to do. Her vision was starting to fade when she heard it, the purr of an expensive engine cutting through the storm. Headlights swept across the alley, and a black Bentley rolled to a stop just feet away from where she huddled. The engine died. A car door slammed. Through the rain, Sophia saw a pair of expensive Italian leather shoes approach, their owner seemingly unbothered by the storm. She tried to look up, to see the face of the man who'd stopped, but her eyes wouldn't focus. Everything was going dark. Please, she managed to whisper, her last conscious thought devoted to the baby in her arms. Save him. The shoes stopped directly in front of her, and a deep voice, rough with something that might have been shock, cut through the sound of falling rain. Jesus Christ. Strong hands reached for her just as Sophia Chen's world went completely black. What would you do if your whole life turned out to be a lie? Drop your reaction in the comments, and hit subscribe to follow Sophia's fight for survival. Chapter 2, The Devil's Bargain. Sophia woke to warmth and silence. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. The surface beneath her was impossibly soft, nothing like the hospital bed or the cold concrete of the alley. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in a bedroom that belonged in a magazine, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars, and sheets that felt like silk against her skin. Panic shot through her like lightning. Lucas. Your baby is fine. The voice came from the shadows near the window, deep and commanding. A man stepped into the light and Sophia's breath caught in her throat. He was tall, probably 6'3", with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, handsome in a dangerous way that made her pulse quicken despite everything she'd been through. Who are you? She managed, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Where's my son? Alexander Gray. And your son is with my housekeeper, Elena. She's been a nanny for 20 years, he's in good hands. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else. Rain, maybe. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. 18 hours? Sophia tried to sit up, but her body protested. I need to see him. You need to rest. His tone brooked no argument. You nearly died in that alley. Hypothermia, dehydration, blood loss from your recent surgery. Elena had to change your clothes, you were soaked through. Heat flooded her cheeks as she realized she was wearing an oversized silk shirt that definitely wasn't hers. You had no right. I had every right to save your life. Something flickered in his eyes. You were unconscious in the rain with a newborn baby. What was I supposed to do, leave you there? The question hung between them, and Sophia felt her defenses crumble slightly. He was right. If he hadn't found her, she and Lucas might both be dead. Thank you, she said quietly. But I should go. I've imposed enough. His laugh was bitter. Go where? Back to the alley? Your stepmother made it very clear on the news this morning that you're no longer part of the Chen family. The news? Horror washed over her. Billionaire's daughter exposed as fraud, that was the headline. Very thorough character assassination. Your stepmother has quite the gift for publicity. Sophia closed her eyes, humiliation burning through her. Not only had her world collapsed, but it had happened in front of the entire city. I saw the whole thing unfold, Alexander continued, his voice oddly gentle. The hospital scene, the DNA results, Richard Chen abandoning you. Must have been devastating. Something in his tone made her look at him sharply. How could you have seen? Were you there? I make it my business to know what happens to the Chen family. His expression shuddered, becoming unreadable. Let's just say I have my reasons. What kind of reasons? Instead of answering, he walked to the dresser and picked up a folder. I have a proposition for you, Sophia. A way out of your current situation. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's business. He opened the folder and pulled out what looked like a contract. I need a fiancé. Someone to play the part for a few months while I handle some complicated negotiations. Someone who can move in my circles, attend events, convince people we're madly in love. Sophia stared at him. You want me to pretend to be engaged to you? The pay is generous. 500,000 for 6 months' work, plus room and board for you and your son. At the end, you'll have enough money to start over anywhere you want. That's insane. You don't even know me. I know enough. His eyes met hers, and she saw something dark and calculating there. I know you're desperate. I know you have nowhere else to go. And I know you're not actually a Chen, which makes you perfect for what I need. The last comment stung. What's that supposed to mean? It means you understand betrayal. You understand what it's like to have your family turn their backs on you. His voice hardened. Trust me, it's a qualification that matters in my world. There was pain in his words, old and carefully buried, but real. Sophia found herself wondering what had happened to put that look in his eyes. Why me? She asked. There must be dozens of women who'd jump at the chance to be seen with you. None of them have what I need. He moved closer, and she caught that scent again, expensive and dangerous. None of them have been destroyed by the same people I'm planning to destroy. Her blood went cold. What people? The Chens, Sophia. Your former family. His smile was sharp as a blade. I've been planning their downfall for months. Having Richard Chen's cast-off daughter on my arm while I do it? That's just poetic justice. The room spun around her. This wasn't salvation, it was walking into another trap. But as Lucas's soft cries drifted from somewhere in the penthouse, Sophia realized she didn't have a choice. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. And at the end, you'll let us go? No strings attached. No strings attached. Sophia looked toward the sound of her son's voice, then back at the man who held her future in his hands. She was making a deal with the devil, but what choice did she have? I accept. Alexander's smile was triumphant, but as he extended his hand to shake on their bargain, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just agreed to something far more dangerous than she understood. What she didn't know was that Alexander Gray had been watching her family for over a year, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And her arrival in his life, broken, desperate, and hungry for revenge, was exactly the weapon he'd been looking for. Would you make a deal with the devil to protect your child? Tell us below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more twists. Chapter 3, Playing House. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Sophia was beginning to understand that Alexander Gray's world operated by rules she'd never learned. Your posture is still too defensive, Elena observed as Sophia attempted to walk across the penthouse living room in 4-inch heels while balancing a book on her head. Remember, you belong here now. Act like it. Lucas gurgled happily from his bouncer nearby, watching his mother's transformation with wide eyes. At 3 weeks old, he was already thriving under Elena's expert care, but Sophia still felt like an imposter playing dress-up in designer clothes. I don't understand why I need to learn to walk differently, Sophia muttered, catching herself as she wobbled. It's just pretend. Nothing about Alexander's world is just pretend, Elena said firmly. The charity gala tomorrow night will be your first real test. Everyone who matters will be there, including people who knew you as Richard Chen's daughter. The thought made Sophia's stomach clench. Tomorrow night, she'd have to face the world that had watched her public humiliation just weeks ago, now seeing her as Alexander Gray's mysterious fiancé. What if someone recognizes me? They will. Alexander's voice came from the doorway, and both women turned. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, looking like he'd stepped off the cover of a business magazine. That's the point. The point is to humiliate me further? The point is to show them that you've landed on your feet. He moved into the room with that predatory grace she was beginning to recognize. That you don't need the Chen name or their money to survive. Something in his tone made her study his face. Is that what this is really about? Showing them I don't need them? Among other things. He picked up Lucas, and Sophia's heart did that strange flutter it had been doing every time she saw Alexander with her son. The contrast between his hard business exterior and the gentle way he held the baby never failed to catch her off guard. He likes you, she said softly. He's not old enough to have terrible judgment yet. But Alexander's voice was warm as Lucas grabbed his finger with a tiny fist. You're good with him. I had a younger brother once. The words slipped out before Alexander seemed to realize he'd said them, and his expression immediately shuddered. Elena, make sure Sophia's dress for tomorrow is ready. We leave at 7. He handed Lucas back to Sophia and strode toward his office, but not before she caught a glimpse of old pain in his eyes. A younger brother once. What had happened? The next evening, Sophia stood in front of her bedroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress Elena had chosen was a deep emerald silk that hugged her figure perfectly, and the jewelry Alexander had provided sparkled at her throat and ears. Her hair had been styled by a professional, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like she belonged in Alexander's world. The question was whether she could convince everyone else. Ready? Alexander appeared in her doorway, devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo. As I'll ever be. She picked up her clutch with trembling hands. Sophia. His voice was unusually gentle. You look beautiful. The simple compliment shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. Thank you. The charity gala was everything Sophia had expected and more. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, filled with the city's elite. Cameras flashed as they entered, Alexander's hand warm and steady at the small of her back. Remember, he murmured in her ear, we're madly in love. Try to look like you can't keep your hands off me. Before she could respond, he turned her into his arms, his hand cupping her face as he smiled down at her with such convincing adoration that her breath caught. For a moment, she almost believed it herself. Alexander Gray. A woman's voice cut through the moment, sharp with false sweetness. What a surprise to see you here. They turned to find a stunning brunette approaching, her red dress clinging to her curves like a second skin. She had the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of being the most beautiful woman in any room. Victoria, Alexander's voice was coolly polite. I didn't know you were back in town. Just flew in from Dubai. And who is this lovely creature? Victoria's smile was predatory as her gaze fixed on Sophia. Victoria Sterling, meet my fiancée, Sophia. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Fiancé? How delightfully sudden. And here I thought you were sworn off marriage after the Caroline debacle. Sophia felt Alexander tense beside her, but his smile never wavered. When you meet the right person, plans change. Indeed they do. Victoria's gaze sharpened. You look familiar, dear. Have we met? Before Sophia could answer, another voice cut through the conversation like a blade. Well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. Sophia's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly to find Miranda approaching, resplendent in gold silk, with Richard a step behind her. Her former stepmother's eyes glittered with malicious delight. Miranda. Alexander's voice carried a warning. Richard. Alexander. Richard's greeting was stiff. He looked older than Sophia remembered, more fragile, and refused to meet her eyes. I must say, I'm impressed, Miranda continued, her gaze raking over Sophia's appearance. From homeless to engaged to a billionaire in less than a month. Quite the recovery. Homeless? Victoria's voice was sharp with interest. Oh, didn't you know? Miranda's smile was vicious. Our dear Sophia here was recently discovered to be, well, not quite who she claims to be. DNA tests can be so revealing. The conversation around them had quieted, other guests turning to listen. Sophia felt heat rising in her cheeks, but before she could speak, Alexander's arm tightened around her waist. Yes, we've heard Miranda's version of events, he said smoothly. Fascinating how different the story sounds depending on who's telling it. Are you implying I'm lying? Miranda's voice rose dangerously. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Alexander's smile was razor sharp. Like the fact that you had Sophia's belongings removed from the house before the DNA results were even confirmed. Or that you changed the locks while she was still in the hospital recovering from childbirth. Miranda's face went white, then red. How dare you? How dare I what? Point out that you threw a woman and her newborn baby onto the street in the middle of a storm? Alexander's voice carried clearly across the now silent ballroom. Or mention that you sold her story to the tabloids before she'd even regained consciousness. The gasps from the surrounding crowd were audible. Miranda looked around wildly, realizing that public opinion was shifting against her. She's not even. She's not even what, Miranda? A Chen? You're right. She's not. Alexander pulled Sophia closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She's a gray now. And I protect what's mine. Before anyone could respond, Alexander led Sophia away, leaving Miranda standing in the middle of the dance floor, her face burning with humiliation. Thank you, Sophia whispered as they moved toward the bar. Don't thank me yet. His voice was grim. This is just the beginning. As if to prove his point, Victoria appeared at their side, 2 glasses of champagne in her hands. Well, that was quite the show, she said, offering them each a glass. Though I have to say, Alexander, your taste in damaged goods is rather predictable. Careful, Victoria. Oh, I'm always careful. Victoria's smile was sharp as she turned to Sophia. Tell me, dear, what's it like being a prop in someone else's revenge fantasy? I don't know what you mean. Don't you? How interesting. Victoria sipped her champagne, studying Sophia over the rim. I know exactly who you are, Sophia Chen. Or should I say, Sophia Nobody. The question is, do you know who he is? Before Sophia could ask what she meant, Victoria continued. Did you know Alexander's been planning the Chen family's destruction for over 2 years? That he's been systematically dismantling Richard's business empire piece by piece? That having you on his arm is just the final insult he plans to deliver? Sophia's champagne glass trembled in her hand. That's not true. Isn't it? Ask him about the Meridian deal. Ask him about the Shanghai contracts he stole. Ask him why he really needs a fake fiancé for his upcoming merger. Victoria's smile was triumphant. Or better yet, ask him what really happened to his family. I think you'll find it very illuminating. With that, Victoria glided away, leaving Sophia standing frozen in the middle of the gala, questions racing through her mind. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Alexander was the perfect attentive fiancé, but Sophia couldn't shake Victoria's words. When they finally returned to the penthouse near midnight, she was exhausted and confused. You did well tonight, Alexander said as they entered the living room. Did I? Victoria seemed to think I was nothing more than a prop. Victoria Sterling is a vicious woman who's been trying to destroy me for years. Don't listen to her. Then tell me the truth. Sophia turned to face him. What's the Meridian deal? What Shanghai contracts? Something flickered in Alexander's eyes before his expression went carefully blank. Business matters that don't concern you. Don't they? If I'm supposed to be your fiancé, shouldn't I know what you're really up to? You know what you need to know. Which is nothing, apparently. Frustration boiled over. I'm not just a pretty face to parade around, Alexander. I have a brain, and I'm starting to use it. He was quiet for a long moment, and she thought he might actually tell her the truth. Then his phone rang. I need to take this, he said, walking toward his office. But he didn't close the door completely, and as Sophia headed toward the nursery to check on Lucas, she heard his voice through the crack. Yes, the gala went perfectly. No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. The Chen situation is proceeding exactly as planned. Sophia froze in the hallway, her heart pounding. Victoria had been right. She was nothing more than a pawn in Alexander's game, and she'd been too desperate and grateful to see it. But what was his real endgame? And more importantly, what would happen to her and Lucas when he was finished using them? Pretend love, real sparks. Do you think this is the beginning of something deeper, or a setup for heartbreak? Comment your prediction and subscribe to see what happens next. Chapter 4, Cracks in the Foundation. Sophia didn't sleep that night. She lay in the silk sheets staring at the ceiling, Alexander's words echoing in her mind. The Chen situation is proceeding exactly as planned. Every kind gesture, every protective moment, every time he'd held Lucas, had it all been an act? By morning, she'd made a decision. She needed answers, and she was going to get them. Alexander had already left for the office when she emerged from her room. Elena was in the kitchen feeding Lucas his bottle, humming softly. Elena, Sophia said carefully, how long have you worked for Alexander? 3 years now. Elena's weathered face softened as she looked at the baby. Since right after his family, she stopped abruptly. After his family what? Elena's eyes darted away. It's not my place to say. Please. I need to understand who I'm really dealing with. The older woman was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. His family died in a car accident. His parents and younger brother, Marcus. Alexander was supposed to be in that car, but he'd stayed late at the office. Sophia's chest tightened. That explained the pain she'd glimpsed in his eyes when he'd mentioned having a brother once. What does that have to do with the Chens? Elena's face went pale. I've said too much already. Before Sophia could press further, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but she answered anyway. Sophia? It's Victoria Sterling. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Trust me, after what I'm about to tell you, you'll want to hear this. Meet me at Café Luna in an hour. Come alone, or you'll regret it for the rest of your very short engagement. The line went dead. An hour later, Sophia sat across from Victoria in the trendy cafe, Lucas sleeping peacefully in his carrier beside her chair. Victoria looked immaculate as always, but there was something urgent in her expression. "You came," Victoria said, stirring her cappuccino. "I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want?" "To save your life, actually." Victoria leaned forward. "Do you know how Alexander's family really died?" Elena said it was a car accident. It was. But what she didn't tell you is that Richard Chen was the one driving the other car. The world tilted. What? 3 years ago, Richard was coming home from a business dinner. He'd been drinking, not enough to be legally drunk, but enough to impair his judgment. He ran a red light and slammed into the gray family car. Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were sharp. Alexander's parents and little brother died instantly. Sophia felt sick. That's impossible. Richard would never. Oh, but he would. And he did. Worse, he used his connections to cover it up. The police report was altered, witnesses were paid off, and the whole thing was buried. Officially, it was ruled an equipment malfunction in the Gray family car. You're lying. Victoria pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a photo of a police report, the original one, with Richard's name clearly listed as the driver of the vehicle that caused the accident. Alexander's been planning his revenge ever since. He's systematically destroyed every business deal Richard's touched for the past 2 years. The Meridian contract? Alexander outbid them at the last minute, costing Chen Industries $40 million. The Shanghai expansion? Alexander bought out their partners before they could close. Sophia stared at the phone, her hands shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because tomorrow night, Alexander's hosting a private dinner party. All the city's major investors will be there, including the Japanese consortium he's been courting for months. He's going to announce that he's acquired Chen Industries' debt, all of it. Richard will lose everything. Victoria's smile was cold. And you, my dear, are going to be sitting right beside him when he does it, the perfect symbol of his complete victory. He wouldn't. He would. He has. The papers were signed this morning. Victoria leaned back in her chair. Richard Chen will be bankrupt by Monday. Miranda will leave him, of course, she's not the type to stick around for poverty. And you'll have played your part perfectly. Sophia's mind reeled. Everything made sense now, why Alexander had chosen her, why he'd been so insistent on the 6-month timeline, why he'd been so protective at the gala. She wasn't his salvation, she was his weapon. What do you want from me? She whispered. Help me stop him. Why would you care about Richard Chen? Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly. Because Alexander won't stop with Richard. He's planning to destroy everyone he thinks wronged him, and I'm next on his list. What did you do? I was Richard's alibi that night. I lied to the police, said he was with me at the time of the accident. Victoria's voice dropped. I was sleeping with him, and I didn't want my marriage to implode, so I covered for him. Alexander knows. Everything clicked into place. You're scared. I'm terrified. And you should be too. Victoria grabbed Sophia's wrist. What do you think happens to you and your baby when Alexander's finished with his revenge? You think he's going to let you walk away with $500,000 and a happy ending? He gave me his word. He gave you a contract. Have you read the fine print? Sophia's blood went cold. She'd been so desperate, so grateful, that she'd signed without reading every clause. There's a morality clause buried in Section 12. If you're found to be acting against his interests, and helping his enemies would certainly qualify, you forfeit everything. Including custody rights to any children residing in his household. He can't take Lucas. He's not even. He's been Lucas's primary provider for a month. He has photos of you collapsed in that alley, unable to care for your child. His lawyers could argue that you're an unfit mother, and with his resources. Victoria shrugged. You'd never see your son again. Sophia's vision blurred. She looked down at Lucas, sleeping so peacefully, unaware that his world was about to shatter again. What do you want me to do? Get me proof of what he's planning. Documents, recordings, anything that shows he's been deliberately sabotaging Richard's business. If I can expose him before tomorrow night's dinner, I can save us both. And if I get caught? Then we're both dead. Victoria's smile was sharp. But if you don't try, you're dead anyway. At least this way, you have a chance. That evening, Sophia paced her room, waiting for Alexander to return from the office. When she finally heard his key in the door, her heart hammered against her ribs. Sophia? His voice carried through the penthouse. Where are you? Coming. She forced brightness into her voice and walked out to meet him. He looked tired, she realized. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when they'd first met, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. How was your day? She asked, hating how natural the domestic question sounded. Long, productive. He loosened his tie, and she caught a glimpse of vulnerability in his expression. How's Lucas? Perfect. Elena says he's starting to smile. Something soft crossed Alexander's face. I'd like to see that. For a moment, Sophia almost forgot what she'd learned. This man, who held her son so gently and looked at her like she was precious, could he really be planning to destroy her? Alexander, she said carefully, tomorrow night's dinner party, what exactly are we celebrating? His expression shuddered immediately. Business. What kind of business? The kind you don't need to worry about. He moved toward his office. I need to make some calls. Alexander, wait. The words spilled out before she could stop them. Are you planning to hurt Richard? He went very still. When he turned back to her, his eyes were cold as winter. Why would you ask that? I need to know what I'm walking into tomorrow. You're walking into a dinner party with your fiancé. That's all you need to know. He disappeared into his office, and this time, the door closed firmly behind him. Sophia stood in the hallway, her decision made. Victoria was right, she needed proof, and she needed it tonight. She waited until she heard the shower running in Alexander's suite, then crept toward his office. The door was locked, but she'd watched him enter the code enough times to memorize it, Marcus's birthday. Her heart broke a little as she typed in the numbers. Even his security code was a tribute to the brother he'd lost. The office was dimly lit by the city lights streaming through the windows. Alexander's laptop sat open on his desk, and beside it was a stack of legal documents. Sophia's hands shook as she flipped through them. Chen Industries debt acquisition. Complete asset transfer. Liquidation authorization. All signed. All final. All scheduled to take effect Monday morning. She grabbed her phone and started photographing the documents, her hands trembling so badly she could barely hold it steady. This was it, the proof Victoria needed. A sound from the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps. Coming toward the office. Sophia shoved the documents back into place and looked frantically for somewhere to hide, but it was too late. The door opened, and Alexander stood silhouetted in the doorway, his hair still damp from the shower. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his gaze dropped to the phone in her hand. Taking pictures, Sophia? His voice was deadly quiet. I can explain. Can you? He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my fiancé is spying on me. She backed away until she hit the wall. Alexander, please. Please what? Please forgive you for betraying me. Please pretend I didn't just catch you photographing confidential documents. His eyes were black with fury. Tell me, was this Victoria's idea, or did you come up with it all on your own? Sophia's silence was answer enough. Victoria. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I should have known. She always did prefer to use other people to fight her battles. She told me about the accident, Sophia whispered. About your family. Alexander went very still. What about it? About how Richard killed them. For a moment, she thought he might deny it. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, and she saw the man behind the mask, broken, grieving, consumed by a need for justice that had twisted into something darker. Yes, he said quietly. Richard Chen murdered my family and walked away free. So I decided to return the favor. By using me? By using whatever tools I had available. His voice hardened again. Just like Victoria used you tonight. At least she was honest about what she wanted. Was she? Did she tell you that she's the reason Richard was able to cover up the accident? That without her alibi, he would have gone to prison for manslaughter? Alexander moved closer, and Sophia pressed herself against the wall. Did she mention that she's been blackmailing Richard for 3 years, threatening to recant her testimony unless he pays her? Sophia's world tilted again. What? Your noble savior has been bleeding Richard dry ever since my family died. The only reason she wants to stop me is because a bankrupt man can't pay blackmail. Alexander's smile was sharp as a blade. So tell me, Sophia, which one of us is really the villain here? Before she could answer, Lucas's cries echoed through the penthouse. The sound seemed to break something in both of them. I need to go to him, Sophia whispered. Yes, you do. Alexander stepped aside, but as she reached the door, his voice stopped her. Sophia? She turned back. Tomorrow night's dinner is still happening. You'll be there, playing the perfect fiancé, or the consequences will be severe. Do you understand? Looking into his eyes, Sophia realized she'd never understood anything less in her life. But she nodded anyway. As she walked toward the nursery to comfort her crying son, one thought echoed in her mind. She was trapped between two people who'd destroy her to get what they wanted, and tomorrow night, one of them was going to win. The question was, which one would leave her and Lucas alive? Secrets are unraveling fast. Who do you trust, Alexander, Victoria, or no one at all? Comment your theory and hit subscribe to stay ahead of the betrayal. Chapter 5, Battle Lines Drawn. The legal papers arrived at 7 in the morning, delivered by a process server who looked apologetic as he handed them to Sophia at Alexander's front door. Petition for emergency custody, she read aloud, her voice hollow. Miranda Chen versus Sophia Chen, but I'm not even a Chen anymore. Alexander appeared behind her, already dressed for battle in a charcoal suit that made him look dangerous. He took the papers from her trembling hands, his jaw tightening as he scanned them. She's claiming you're an unfit mother, he said grimly. Unstable living situation, unknown paternity of the child, history of homelessness and mental distress. She can't do this. She has no legal standing. She's claiming she acted as Lucas's grandmother for the first weeks of his life, providing financial support through Richard. Alexander's voice was ice cold. My lawyers are already on it. 2 hours later, they sat in the gleaming conference room of Alexander's law firm while his lead attorney, Marcus Reed, spread documents across the mahogany table. Miranda Chen has made a significant error, Reed said with satisfaction. In her haste to claim custody, she's exposed herself to federal investigation. The financial records she submitted show clear evidence of money laundering and tax evasion. Can we use that? Sophia asked. We already are. I've filed a counterpetition exposing her crimes, and I've contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Reed's smile was sharp. By the end of the week, she'll be more concerned with staying out of prison than claiming custody of your son. Relief flooded through Sophia, but it was short-lived. Reed's expression grew serious as he turned to Alexander. However, there's something else we need to discuss. Something about Lucas's paternity that changes everything. Alexander went very still. What do you mean? I ran a comprehensive background check on Sophia when you first brought her to me. Standard procedure for these arrangements. Reed pulled out a thick file. The DNA test that Miranda used to prove Sophia wasn't Richard's daughter? It revealed something else. Something I don't think Miranda realized. Sophia's blood turned cold. What? The test compared Sophia's DNA to Richard's, but it also ran her profile through the national database. She's a match to another sample in the system. Reed's voice was gentle. Sophia, your biological father was Marcus Gray. The world stopped spinning. That's impossible, Sophia whispered. Marcus Gray was Alexander's older brother, Reed continued. He died in the same car accident as their parents 3 years ago. Sophia looked at Alexander, whose face had gone completely white. You knew, she breathed. You knew I was Marcus's daughter. No. Alexander's voice was hoarse. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. But you suspected something. That's why you helped me. That's why you, understanding crashed over her like a wave. Your revenge wasn't just about Richard killing your family. It was about getting back the family he took from you. Alexander stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need air. He left the conference room, and Sophia sat in stunned silence. Everything made sense now, why Alexander had been so gentle with Lucas, why he'd looked at her son with such pain and wonder. Lucas wasn't just any baby. He was a Gray. There's more, Reed said quietly. About Lucas's father. Sophia's attention snapped back to him. What about him? You told Alexander it was a one-night stand. Someone you met at a party who you couldn't remember clearly. Yes. I had too much to drink. Everything was blurry. Reed's expression was grim. Sophia, I don't think you had too much to drink. I think you were drugged. The room spun around her. What? The party you attended, it was hosted by the Sterling family. Victoria Sterling's son, James, was there. He's running for state senate now, but 3 years ago, he had a reputation for aggressive behavior toward women. Are you saying? I'm saying James Sterling is Lucas's father. And I think he assaulted you. Sophia's legs gave out, and she collapsed back into her chair. The night she'd tried so hard to forget came rushing back, the party, the strange taste of her drink, waking up in a strange room with her dress torn and no memory of how she'd gotten there. Oh God, she whispered. There's a pattern, Reed continued. Other women, other parties. But James's family has money and connections. The victims were paid off or intimidated into silence. Rage, pure and white-hot, flooded through Sophia. That bastard. That's sick, twisted. Which brings us to our current problem, Reed said. If James Sterling discovers he has a son. As if summoned by his words, Reed's assistant knocked on the conference room door. Mr. Reed? There's a man here to see Miss Chen. He says it's urgent. Richard Chen walked into the room, looking older and more fragile than Sophia had ever seen him. His hands shook as he approached the table. Sophia, he said, his voice breaking. I know I have no right to be here, but I had to come. I had to try to make this right. There's nothing to make right, Richard. You made your choice. I was wrong. I was scared and hurt and I made the worst mistake of my life. Tears ran down his cheeks. You're my daughter in every way that matters. DNA doesn't change 22 years of love. It changed things for you. No, Miranda changed things for me. She manipulated the situation, made me believe. He stopped, shaking his head. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to help you fight her. Why would you do that? Because Lucas is my grandson, and you're my daughter, and I'll be damned if I let Miranda destroy what's left of our family. Richard's voice grew stronger. I know about the custody petition. I also know about Miranda's financial crimes. I've been gathering evidence for months. Reed leaned forward with interest. What kind of evidence? Bank records, forged documents, bribery payments. Everything you need to put her away for a very long time. Richard pulled a flash drive from his pocket. I was going to use it to divorce her quietly, but this is more important." Before anyone could respond, Alexander returned to the conference room, his face set in hard lines. Behind him walked a woman Sophia didn't recognize, tall, elegant, with silver hair and kind eyes. "Sophia," Alexander said formally, "I'd like you to meet Judge Catherine Gray." "My aunt." The older woman smiled warmly. "Hello, my dear. I'm so sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I asked Catherine to come because we have a problem," Alexander continued. "Victoria Sterling has just filed an injunction to stop our custody case." "On what grounds?" Reed demanded. "On the grounds that her son has a claim to the child." Alexander's voice was deadly quiet. "James Sterling is petitioning for paternal rights to Lucas." The room fell silent. Sophia felt like she was drowning, pulled under by wave after wave of revelation and betrayal. "How did he find out?" she whispered. "Victoria must have done her own DNA testing," Judge Gray said gently. "She's been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment to strike." "But James assaulted me. He's a rapist." "Proving that will be difficult without physical evidence or witnesses," Reed said grimly. "And James has resources, political connections." "He has more than that," Alexander interrupted. "He has Victoria, who's just formed an alliance with Miranda. They're combining their resources to take Lucas away from both of us." Sophia stood on shaking legs. "I won't let them. I won't let that monster anywhere near my son." "You won't have to fight alone," Richard said firmly. "I'm with you, whatever it takes." Alexander moved closer, his voice soft. "Sophia, I know you have every reason not to trust me, but you're right. I don't trust you." She met his eyes, seeing the pain her words caused. "But Lucas is family to you now. I have to believe you'll protect him." Before Alexander could respond, Reed's assistant burst through the door, her face pale with panic. "Mr. Reed, there's a problem. A man is here with a court order. He's demanding to see his son." Through the conference room's glass walls, Sophia could see him, tall, blonde, devastatingly handsome in the way that had once made her teenage heart flutter. James Sterling stood in the law firm's reception area, flanked by lawyers and holding official-looking papers. But it was the man beside him that made Sophia's blood run cold. A social services worker with a briefcase and the authority to take her son. "He can't," she breathed. "He can't just take Lucas." Judge Gray was already on her phone, speaking in rapid, clipped tones to someone with power. Reed was frantically shuffling through legal books. Richard was making calls to contacts in the mayor's office. But Alexander just stood there, staring at James Sterling through the glass, his hands clenched into fists. "Alexander," Sophia whispered. "Tell me you have a plan." He turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes that terrified her more than James Sterling's court order. "I have a plan," he said quietly. "But you're not going to like it." Before she could ask what he meant, James Sterling's voice carried across the reception area, loud and confident and absolutely certain of his victory. "I'm here for my son," he announced. "Lucas Gray Sterling. And I'm taking him home today." The custody war just exploded. Should Sophia trust Alexander now that everything's on the line? Like, subscribe, and comment who you think is the real danger. Chapter 6, The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Sophia watched James Sterling through the glass wall and felt something inside her shift. For weeks, she'd been reacting, to Miranda's cruelty, to Alexander's manipulation, to Victoria's threats. Always responding, never acting. That ended now. "No," she said quietly, and every head in the conference room turned toward her. "Sophia," Alexander started. "I said no." She straightened her shoulders, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like herself again. "I'm done being everyone's victim. I'm done letting people destroy my life while I stand there and take it." Judge Gray smiled approvingly. "What do you have in mind, dear?" "I'm going to destroy them first." Sophia's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "All of them." But I need your help. Alexander stepped closer. What can I do? Give me access to your security team. I need surveillance equipment, financial records, anything that can help me build cases against James and Victoria. Done. Richard, she turned to her former stepfather, I need everything you have on Miranda. Bank records, phone logs, medical records, everything. Richard nodded firmly. Already yours. Reed looked intrigued. What's your plan? They think I'm weak. Broken. A scared little girl with a baby who'll roll over and let them take what they want. Sophia's smile was sharp as broken glass. Let them keep thinking that. While they're busy gloating, I'll be gathering ammunition. 20 minutes later, Sophia walked into the reception area where James waited, flanked by his lawyers and the social worker. She made sure to look appropriately devastated, shoulders slumped, eyes red from crying, hands shaking as she clutched a tissue. James, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please don't do this. His smile was predatory. Sophia. You look like hell, actually. He laughed at his own joke. But don't worry. Once I have custody of my son, you can visit. Under supervision, of course. He's not your son, she whispered. You know what you did to me. I don't know what you're talking about. His voice was loud enough for his lawyers to hear, perfectly innocent. We had a wonderful night together. Very consensual. The social worker stepped forward with her briefcase. Ms. Chen, I need to discuss the transition arrangements. Wait. Sophia pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. I need to call my babysitter. To let her know you're coming for Lucas. What she actually did was activate the recording app Alexander's security team had installed. James's lawyers were too busy reviewing paperwork to notice. You're making the right choice, Sophia, James said, moving closer. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. Just like you made the right choice that night at the party. Even if you don't remember saying yes. I didn't say yes, she whispered back. You drugged me. Prove it. His smile was vicious. Oh wait, you can't. Because you waited too long to report it, and now it's just your word against mine. And I'm about to be a state senator. Why are you doing this? You don't even want Lucas. Because I can. Because you thought you could disappear and pretend it never happened. He leaned closer. I own you, Sophia. I've owned you since that night. And now I own your son too. Perfect. Everything she needed, recorded in crystal clear audio. Actually, Alexander's voice cut across the room like a blade, there's been a development. He walked into the reception area carrying a thick folder, his expression unreadable. Mr. Sterling, there's something you should see before you proceed. What kind of development? James's lawyer demanded. Alexander opened the folder and pulled out what looked like medical records. DNA results from Lucas's birth. The hospital ran a full genetic panel as part of standard newborn screening. Sophia held her breath, not knowing what Alexander was planning. And? James's voice was sharp with suspicion. And Lucas has a rare genetic condition that requires ongoing medical treatment. Very expensive medical treatment. Alexander's voice was perfectly neutral. As his biological father, you'd be financially responsible for his care. We're talking about roughly $2 million per year, for the rest of his life. The color drained from James's face. That's impossible. The condition is called Gray-Sterling syndrome, actually. Named after the two families that carry the recessive gene. Alexander's smile was cold. Funny how genetics work, isn't it? Sophia realized what Alexander was doing. He was lying, brilliantly and convincingly, to scare James off. The medical records in his hands were probably fake, but they looked official enough to fool lawyers who didn't know better. I want those records verified, James snapped. Of course. That will take about 6 weeks, during which time Lucas will remain in his current custody arrangement. Alexander closed the folder. Unless, of course, you'd like to waive your parental claim and avoid the financial liability altogether. James stared at the folder like it contained a bomb. $2 million a year was serious money, even for the Sterling family. And if he was planning a political career, being saddled with massive medical expenses for a child from a rape he'd never admitted to wouldn't help his image. I need to consult with my client, his lawyer said quickly. Of course. Take all the time you need. Alexander's voice was perfectly cordial. We'll be here when you're ready to proceed. James shot Sophia a look of pure hatred before stalking out with his legal team and the social worker in tow. The moment they were gone, Sophia sagged against the wall. There's no genetic condition, is there? She asked. Not even close. Lucas is perfectly healthy. Alexander's smile was grim. But James doesn't know that, and his lawyers will need weeks to verify the medical records I just showed them. Those were fake. Completely fabricated by my best forger. But they'll hold up to initial scrutiny. He moved closer. That was brilliant, by the way. Getting him to confess on recording. It was just the beginning. Sophia straightened, her moment of weakness over. I need to see Miranda. Richard looked alarmed. Sophia, that's not safe. She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. That's exactly why I need to see her. Desperate people make mistakes. 3 hours later, Sophia sat across from Miranda in the visiting room of the Federal Detention Center where she was being held on financial crimes charges. Miranda looked haggard, her perfect hair limp and her designer clothes replaced with an orange jumpsuit. You look terrible, Sophia said conversationally. You little bitch. Miranda's voice was venomous. This is all your fault. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you got caught stealing money and now you're facing 20 years in federal prison. Sophia leaned back in her chair. But there's something I need to know first. I'm not telling you anything. Oh, I think you will. Because I can make your situation better or worse, depending on what you tell me. Sophia pulled out her phone and showed Miranda a photo. Do you recognize this? Miranda's face went white. The photo showed a prescription bottle with her name on it, filled with a medication that could be lethal in large doses. Where did you get that? Richard's been cleaning out your medicine cabinet. Funny thing about that prescription, it was filled 3 days before my mother died. The same medication the coroner found traces of in her system. That's impossible. The autopsy showed she died of a heart attack. She did. A heart attack caused by medication she never should have taken. Sophia leaned forward. You poisoned her, didn't you? Slipped it into her tea or her food, then sat back and watched her die so you could marry Richard. Miranda's mask finally slipped, revealing the monster underneath. She had everything. The perfect husband, the perfect daughter, the perfect life. And what did I have? Nothing. I deserved better. So you killed her for it. I freed Richard from a marriage that was making him miserable. He just didn't know it yet. Miranda's voice was cold, matter-of-fact. Your mother was weak. She couldn't handle the pressure of Richard's world. I could. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison for it. You can't prove anything. That prescription could have been for anything. Sophia smiled and held up her phone, which had been recording the entire conversation. Actually, I can prove everything now. Thank you for the confession. Miranda lunged across the table, but the guards were faster, restraining her as she screamed threats and curses. Sophia walked out of the detention center feeling lighter than she had in months. Her mother's killer would finally face justice. That evening, James Sterling's campaign launch was the social event of the season. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was packed with politicians, socialites, and media, all there to celebrate the rising star of state politics. Sophia arrived alone, wearing a stunning red dress that made her look like she owned the world. She'd spent hours perfecting her appearance, knowing that tonight would make or break everything. Alexander had wanted to come with her, but she'd refused. This was something she needed to do alone. Ladies and gentlemen, the Master of Ceremonies announced, please welcome our next state senator, James Sterling. The crowd applauded as James took the stage, looking every inch the golden boy politician. His speech was polished, full of promises about family values and protecting children. The irony was almost too much to bear. Before Mr. Sterling continues, Sophia called out, her voice cutting clearly across the ballroom, I think there's something everyone should hear. Security moved toward her, but she was faster, pulling out a small speaker and hitting play. James's voice filled the room, crystal clear and unmistakably his. I own you, Sophia. I've owned you since that night. And now I own your son too. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and James stood frozen on the stage, his political career crumbling in real time. That recording is fake, he shouted into the microphone. This woman is trying to destroy me. Actually, Sophia said, walking toward the stage, this woman is just getting started. She pulled out her phone and played another recording, Miranda's confession to murdering her mother. Then another, recorded phone calls between Victoria and Miranda planning to take Lucas. Evidence after evidence, each one more damning than the last. By the time she was finished, half the room was calling for James's arrest and the other half was live-streaming the whole thing to social media. You want to know what family values really look like? Sophia asked, her voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. They look like a mother protecting her child from the man who assaulted her. They look like justice for the innocent and consequences for the guilty. James tried to escape through the back exit, but federal agents were waiting for him. As they led him away in handcuffs, he screamed at Sophia. You think this is over? My mother will destroy you for this. Sophia smiled, feeling triumphant for the first time in her life. She'd done it. She'd taken down her enemies and protected her son. But as she turned to leave the ballroom, her phone rang. Elena's voice was frantic, broken by sobs. Sophia. They took him. They took Lucas. The world tilted around her. What? Who took him? Victoria Sterling. She came with men, with guns. She said this was war now. She said, Elena's voice broke completely. She said if you want your son back, you have to come alone. No police, no Alexander, or she'll disappear with him forever. The phone fell from Sophia's numb fingers, clattering to the ballroom floor. She'd won the battle, but Victoria Sterling had just declared war. And Lucas was caught in the crossfire. Powerful men fall hardest. Was Sophia's takedown of James Sterling satisfying, or just the beginning of her revenge? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe if you're hooked. Chapter 7, Queens and Kings. Sophia stood frozen in the hotel ballroom as Elena's words echoed in her mind. Lucas was gone. Victoria had her son. Alexander appeared at her side, his face grim as he surveyed the chaos around them. What happened? Victoria took Lucas. Sophia's voice was barely steady. She wants me to come alone. Like hell. Alexander pulled out his phone, already dialing. My security team will. No. Sophia grabbed his wrist. She said no police, no backup, or she disappears with him forever. I won't risk my son's life. Then we do this smart. Alexander's eyes were cold as winter steel. My team is already tracking Victoria's movements. She's heading toward the marina, probably to her family's private island. 30 minutes later, they stood on the dock watching Victoria's yacht disappear into the darkness. Alexander's speedboat cut through the water behind them. Elena and Richard huddled in the passenger seats while Sophia gripped the rail, her heart hammering against her ribs. The island has only one dock, Alexander shouted over the engine noise. She'll be expecting us to come that way. What's the alternative? There's a service entrance on the north side. Rocky, dangerous, but it might give us the element of surprise. The Sterling family compound loomed ahead, a fortress of glass and steel perched on the cliffs. Lights blazed from every window, and Sophia could see figures moving behind the glass. I'm going in alone, she said as they approached the hidden cove Alexander had chosen. The hell you are. Alexander, listen to me. She turned to face him, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. Victoria wants me, not you. If we both go in, she might panic and hurt Lucas. She might hurt him anyway. Then I'll make sure she doesn't. Sophia's voice hardened with resolve. I've spent weeks being everyone's victim. Tonight, I fight back. The compound's security was lighter than expected. Victoria was overconfident, certain her threats would keep them away. Sophia made it to the main house without being detected, slipping through a servant's entrance Alexander's team had mapped days earlier. She found them in the main salon, a room that screamed old money and older secrets. Victoria sat in a leather chair like a queen on her throne, Lucas sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside her. Miranda was there too, somehow free from federal custody, pacing like a caged animal. Sophia. Victoria's smile was sharp as broken glass. Right on time. Let him go, Victoria. Your fight is with me. My fight is with everyone who's tried to destroy my family. Victoria's voice was silk over steel. Did you really think you could expose James and walk away unscathed? James exposed himself. I just gave him the rope. Clever girl. Victoria stood, moving closer to the bassinet. But not clever enough. Sophia's heart stopped. Don't touch him. I'm not going to hurt him. He's my grandson, after all. Victoria's smile was maternal and terrifying. But I am going to disappear with him. New identities, new life, far away from the mess you've created. You can't seriously think. I think James is going to prison because of you. I think my family's reputation is in ruins because of you. Victoria's mask slipped, revealing the rage beneath. So yes, I'm taking Lucas. Consider it payment for services rendered. Miranda stepped forward, her face twisted with malice. She's right. You've destroyed everything. My marriage, my freedom, my future. Your marriage was built on murder, Sophia said quietly. You killed my mother. I did what I had to do to survive. Miranda's voice cracked. Just like I'm doing now. She pulled a gun from her purse, pointing it directly at Sophia's chest. Victoria promised me sanctuary if I helped her. A new identity, enough money to start over. Miranda, Richard's voice came from the doorway, broken and pleading. Don't do this. He stood there looking older than his years, flanked by two men Sophia didn't recognize. I won't let you hurt her. You don't have a choice, Miranda snarled. She's ruined everything. The least she can do is pay for it with her life. The only person paying for anything tonight is you. Alexander stepped from the shadows behind Richard, moving with deadly grace. The two men with Richard weren't random security, they were federal agents, their badges glinting in the lamplight. Miranda Chen, you're under arrest for the murder of Elizabeth Chen, one agent announced. Miranda spun toward them, gun wavering. You can't prove anything. Actually, we can. Alexander held up a recording device. Your confession in the detention center was quite thorough. And the prescription bottles we found in your personal effects? They still had your fingerprints on them. That's impossible. I destroyed. Miranda stopped, realizing she'd just confessed again. The gun went off. Sophia threw herself toward Lucas's bassinet as the bullet shattered a lamp behind her. Alexander tackled Miranda, wrestling the weapon away as the federal agents moved in. But Victoria had other plans. She snatched Lucas from his bassinet and ran toward the glass doors leading to the terrace. Stay back. All of you. Sophia followed, her heart in her throat. Outside, the wind whipped across the cliff face, and below, the ocean crashed against the rocks 50 feet down. Victoria, please. He's just a baby. He's a sterling. Victoria held Lucas against her chest, backing toward the cliff edge. He belongs with his family. I am his family. You're nothing. A nobody who stumbled into our lives and destroyed everything you touched. Victoria's voice rose with hysteria. But I can fix this. I can make it right. She was going to jump. Sophia realized with crystal clarity that Victoria Sterling was going to throw herself off the cliff rather than lose control of the situation. You're right, Sophia said quietly, taking a careful step forward. I am nobody. But Lucas isn't. He's innocent. He doesn't deserve to pay for what the adults in his life have done. He deserves better than you. Maybe. But he deserves the chance to decide that for himself. Another step. When he's older. When he can understand what happened here. Victoria's grip on Lucas loosened slightly. I won't let him grow up thinking his father was a rapist. Then help me make sure he doesn't have to. Sophia was close enough now to see the tears streaming down Victoria's face. Help me give him a better story. For a moment, they stood frozen on the cliff edge, grandmother and mother locked in a battle of wills with an innocent baby between them. Then Victoria's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, Lucas crying as she loosened her grip. Sophia lunged forward, pulling her son into her arms just as Alexander reached them. It's over, he said quietly, wrapping his arms around both of them. The federal agents took Victoria into custody, her fight finally drained out of her. Miranda was already in handcuffs, screaming threats that no one was listening to anymore. Richard approached slowly, his face wet with tears. Sophia, I know. She looked at the man who'd raised her, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. You were scared. You made a mistake. But you came back when it mattered. Can you ever forgive me? We'll figure it out. She shifted Lucas in her arms, marveling at how perfect and unaware he was of the chaos that had surrounded his short life. We have time. Alexander was oddly quiet as they made their way back to the boat. It wasn't until they were halfway to the mainland that Sophia noticed he was favoring his left side. Alexander? Are you hurt? It's nothing. But his voice was strained, and when she looked closer, she could see blood seeping through his shirt. Oh God. When did this happen? Miranda got off a second shot while I was tackling her. He tried to smile. Don't worry. It's just a flesh wound. But it wasn't. By the time they reached the marina, Alexander had lost consciousness, his skin pale and clammy. The paramedics rushed him to the hospital while Sophia sat in the ambulance, Lucas in her arms and terror in her heart. She'd spent weeks thinking Alexander was using her, manipulating her for his own revenge. But as she watched him fight for his life in the hospital bed, she realized the truth. Somewhere between the fake engagement and the real danger, between the careful manipulation and the genuine protection, she'd fallen in love with him. And now she might lose him just when she'd found the courage to admit it. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside Alexander's bed, and Sophia gripped his hand, whispering the words she should have said weeks ago. Don't you dare leave us now. Not when we're finally free. One mother's love versus a dynasty's wrath. Would you walk into danger to save your child? Like, comment, and subscribe if Sophia's courage blew you away. Chapter 8, Empire of Love. 6 months later, Sophia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching the city bustle 40 stories below. The nameplate on her desk read, Sophia Chen Gray, CEO, Phoenix Rising Enterprises, and she still felt a thrill seeing it there. Her company specialized in helping women who'd been betrayed, by husbands, families, business partners. In just 6 months, Phoenix Rising had become the most sought-after crisis management firm in the city, and Sophia had discovered she had a talent for turning other people's disasters into opportunities. Mama's working again, came a familiar deep voice from the doorway. Sophia turned to find Alexander leaning against the doorframe, looking devastatingly handsome in his charcoal suit. The scar from Miranda's bullet was barely visible now, a thin line on his left side that she traced with her fingers every morning when they woke up together. Lucas is napping, he continued, moving into her office with that predatory grace that still made her pulse quicken. Elena's watching him, and I had a free hour between meetings. Just an hour? Sophia raised an eyebrow as he approached. Maybe 2. His arms circled her waist, pulling her against him. Depends on how persuasive you are. Before she could respond, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Miss Chen Grey? Your 3 o'clock is here. Sophia sighed, stepping back from Alexander's embrace. Send her in, Janet. The woman who entered was young, maybe 25, with the same haunted look Sophia recognized from her own mirror 6 months ago. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the way she held herself, defensive, broken, scared. Miss Chen Grey? I'm Caroline Morrison. I saw your interview on the news last week. About helping women who've been betrayed. Please, sit. Sophia gestured to the comfortable chairs arranged around a coffee table. Tell me what happened. Caroline's story poured out, a tech startup stolen by her business partner and lover, who'd used her innovative algorithm to build a billion-dollar company while leaving her with nothing. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her face. Everyone says I should just move on, Caroline whispered. That fighting him will only make things worse. What do you want to do? Sophia asked gently. I want to destroy him the way he destroyed me. Alexander shifted in his chair, and Sophia caught his slight smile. He'd said those exact words to her once, in another life when revenge had seemed like the only answer. Revenge is tempting, Sophia said carefully. But justice is better. Let me show you the difference. 3 hours later, Caroline left with a team of lawyers, a plan of action, and hope in her eyes for the first time in months. Alexander watched her go, then turned to Sophia with something like wonder in his expression. You're incredible, you know that? I learned from the best. She gathered her files, preparing to leave for the day. Speaking of which, Richard's picking up Lucas for dinner tonight. Something about teaching him to appreciate fine cuisine. At 8 months old? Apparently it's never too early to develop a sophisticated palate. Sophia laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in years. He's making up for lost time. The relationship with Richard had been complicated to rebuild, but they'd done it slowly, carefully. He'd proven himself during those terrible hours on Victoria's Island, and Lucas adored his grandfather. More importantly, Richard had accepted full responsibility for his mistakes and spent every day since trying to earn back her trust. Good, Alexander said, his voice suddenly serious. Because I have plans for us tonight. Something in his tone made Sophia look at him sharply. What kind of plans? The kind that require your complete attention. His smile was mysterious as he took her hand. Trust me? The question carried weight beyond the simple words. Trust had been hard-won between them, built brick by brick through honesty and time and choosing each other every day. Always, she said, and meant it. 2 hours later, Sophia found herself on the roof of Alexander's building, their building now, surrounded by candlelight and rose petals. The city sparkled below them, but her attention was focused entirely on the man standing before her, his hands shaking slightly as he reached into his jacket pocket. Sophia, he began, his voice rough with emotion. 6 months ago, I asked you to pretend to be my fiancé. It was business, cold and calculated and purely for revenge. Alexander. Let me finish. He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring that caught the candlelight and threw it back in brilliant sparks. Tonight, I'm asking you to be my wife. Not for business, not for revenge, not for any reason except that I love you more than I thought possible to love another person. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The ring was perfect, not ostentatious or showy, but elegant and timeless, exactly what she would have chosen for herself. You saved me, Alexander continued, his voice breaking slightly. You took a man who was drowning in his own bitterness and showed him what it meant to live again. You gave me Lucas, who's taught me that love doesn't require blood. You gave me a future I never thought I'd want. Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she looked at this man who'd become everything to her, protector, partner, lover, friend. The first time I proposed, it was a lie wrapped in a contract, he said. This time, it's just the truth. I love you, Sophia. Will you marry me? For real this time? Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, of course yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled, then stood to kiss her as the city lights sparkled around them like fallen stars. 3 months later, Sophia stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Cathedral, staring at herself in the mirror. The dress was everything she'd dreamed of, silk and lace that made her feel like a princess, but with clean lines that spoke to the strong woman she'd become. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Richard appeared behind her, elegant in his formal tuxedo, tears already gathering in his eyes. Don't start crying yet, Sophia warned, adjusting his boutonniere. We haven't even made it down the aisle. I can't help it. My daughter's getting married. His voice cracked on the word daughter, and Sophia felt her own tears threaten. They'd chosen to keep things simple, immediate family only, in the cathedral where her mother had been married 25 years earlier. It felt right, like completing a circle that had been broken too long. Elena appeared in the doorway, Lucas perfect in his tiny tuxedo, a small pillow tied to his wrist with the wedding rings. Your best man is ready, Elena announced, beaming as she handed Lucas to Sophia. Lucas babbled happily, reaching for her veil with chubby fingers. At 11 months old, he was walking now, though unsteadily, and his first word had been, Dada, while looking directly at Alexander. Are you ready for this, little man? Sophia asked, kissing his soft cheek. Ready to make Daddy an honest man? As if in response, Lucas clapped his hands and gave her his most charming smile. The organ music swelled, and Sophia took Richard's arm, Lucas balanced on her other hip. It wasn't traditional, but nothing about their family had been traditional from the start. The cathedral doors opened, and there was Alexander waiting at the altar, more handsome than she'd ever seen him. His smile when he saw her was pure joy, uncomplicated and real. But as Sophia started down the aisle, her phone buzzed with an urgent text from her lawyer. She glanced down, expecting a business emergency, but the message made her blood run cold. Miranda's confessed to another murder. Not just your mother. Alexander's parents weren't killed by Richard, they were poisoned first. Miranda's been playing a longer game than anyone realized. We need to talk. Now. Sophia's steps faltered, her perfect wedding day suddenly tilting off its axis. At the altar, Alexander's smile faded as he saw her expression. The music continued to play, the guests continued to smile, but Sophia's mind was racing. If Miranda had poisoned Alexander's parents before the car crash, then everything they thought they knew about that night was wrong. Which meant Miranda's web of lies and murder stretched back further than anyone had imagined. And if she was still confessing to crimes from prison, what other secrets was she planning to reveal? From enemies to soulmates. Was this the most satisfying transformation ever? Comment your favorite moment, and subscribe for more epic love stories. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs as she stood frozen in the cathedral aisle. Around her, 200 guests waited in hushed anticipation, but all she could see was Alexander's concerned face at the altar. What's wrong? Richard whispered, feeling her trembling through his arm. She forced herself to keep walking, one foot in front of the other. Whatever Miranda had confessed could wait 30 minutes. This moment, their moment, belonged to them. At the altar, Alexander's eyes searched hers. Hey, he murmured, taking Lucas from her arms as Richard placed her hand in his. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Together, she whispered back, and meant it. The ceremony blurred past in a haze of joy and underlying tension. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Alexander's kiss was fierce, claiming, a promise that whatever storm was coming, they'd weather it as one. But even as rice fell around them like snow and guests cheered, Sophia's mind churned with possibilities. Miranda had already confessed to murdering her mother. What other lives had she destroyed in her twisted game? The reception was a whirlwind of congratulations and dancing, Lucas charming everyone as he toddled between tables in his tiny tuxedo. Sophia managed to smile and laugh at the right moments, but Alexander knew her too well. Tell me, he said during their first dance, his voice low against her ear. She pulled back to meet his eyes. Miranda confessed to another murder. Your parents. Alexander went very still, his hand tightening on her waist. What do you mean? She poisoned them before the crash. It wasn't just Richard's business deal that killed them, it was her, personally. For a moment, she thought he might collapse. Then his jaw hardened, and she saw the billionaire CEO emerge, cold and calculating. No, she said firmly, reading his expression. Not tonight. Not anymore. We're done letting her poison our happiness. Sophia. She's already lost, Alexander. She's in prison for life. Your parents are still gone whether she poisoned them or not. But we're here, we're alive, and we're married. She cupped his face in her hands. Don't let her take this from us too. Slowly, the ice in his eyes melted. He leaned his forehead against hers, breathing deeply. You're right, he said finally. She's had enough of our time. They danced until Lucas fell asleep in Elena's arms, until the last guest had gone home, until it was just the two of them swaying to silence in the empty ballroom. Ready to go home, Mrs. Gray? Alexander asked, his voice warm with promise. More than ready, Mr. Gray. Their honeymoon was a week in Tuscany, where they talked about everything except Miranda's confession. They made love in villa gardens under starlight, explored ancient cities hand in hand, and planned their future over wine and candlelit dinners. It was perfection, and they both knew it couldn't last forever. The real world waited when they returned. Phoenix Rising had 3 new cases, Gray Industries was expanding into Asia, and Lucas had learned to say, Mama married, while they were gone, which made Sophia cry happy tears for 10 minutes straight. But it was Richard who brought them the final piece of Miranda's confession on a rainy Thursday evening. She wants to see you, he said, sitting heavily in their living room. Both of you. Absolutely not, Alexander said immediately. She says there's something else. Something about why she really targeted our families. Richard looked older than his 60 years, worn down by years of betrayal and truth. The detective thinks it might help other victims if we understand her full motive. Sophia looked at her husband, seeing the war in his expression. Part of him wanted to know, needed to understand the woman who'd shaped so much of their pain. The other part wanted to leave the past buried. We go together, she said finally. We listen. And then we close this chapter forever. 3 days later, they sat across from Miranda in a sterile prison visiting room. She looked smaller somehow, her perfectly styled hair now gray and limp, her designer clothes replaced by orange cotton. But her eyes still held that familiar calculating gleam. You look happy, she said to Sophia, ignoring Alexander entirely. Marriage suits you. Though I suppose playing house with him was always your specialty. Say what you came to say, Alexander growled. Miranda smiled, a cold, empty expression. You really think this was all about money? About Richard's business deals? Wasn't it? Sophia asked. Oh, sweet girl. Still so naive. Miranda leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. It was about her. Your precious mother. She had something that should have been mine. The room went deadly quiet. 25 years ago, there were 3 of us who loved the same man, Miranda continued. Your mother, me, and Alexander's mother, Catherine. We were best friends, the 3 of us, until we all fell for the charming young entrepreneur who was going to change the world. Sophia's blood turned to ice. You're lying. Richard chose your mother. Catherine married Alexander's father as a consolation prize. And I. Miranda's smile turned bitter. I was the one left behind. Again. That's impossible, Alexander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Haven't you ever wondered why our family's paths kept crossing? Why Richard and your father were business partners? Why Catherine and your mother stayed friends even after the marriages? Miranda laughed, a sound like breaking glass. We were all connected, darling. One big, twisted family tree. Sophia felt sick. So you killed them. Because of a 25-year-old heartbreak. I killed them because they got the lives that should have been mine. Catherine got the brilliant husband who built an empire. Your mother got Richard and the perfect family. And I got... Miranda's mask finally slipped, revealing the raw wound beneath. I got to watch from the sidelines while they lived my dreams. You're insane, Alexander said flatly. Maybe. But I'm also right. Check the records if you don't believe me. Hotel registrations from business trips, phone bills, credit card statements. Your parents' marriage wasn't the fairy tale you remember, Alexander. And Sophia, your mother wasn't the saint you've imagined. The guard appeared, indicating time was up. Miranda stood, smoothing her prison uniform. Enjoy your happiness while it lasts, she said softly. Because love built on lies never survives the truth. As they walked out of the prison, Sophia felt Alexander's tension like a live wire. She's trying to poison us from behind bars, she said firmly. Don't let her. What if she's telling the truth? Sophia stopped walking, forcing him to face her. Then our parents were human beings who made human mistakes. That doesn't change who we are or what we've built together. Doesn't it? If our whole connection was based on... Our connection is based on choosing each other every single day, she interrupted. On building something real from something fake. On Lucas calling you daddy and meaning it. On the life we're creating together. Alexander stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms right there in the prison parking lot. I love you, he said fiercely. Whatever the truth is about our parents, that doesn't change. Good, she whispered against his lips. Because I'm pregnant. He went very still. What? I found out this morning. I was going to tell you over dinner, but... She gestured helplessly at the prison behind them. Alexander's face transformed, joy replacing anguish in the space of a heartbeat. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. How far along? 2 months. Due in January. A winter baby. He set her down gently, his hands immediately going to her still flat stomach. Lucas is going to be so excited. He's going to be the best big brother. They drove home in comfortable silence, the weight of Miranda's revelations already beginning to fade. Whatever secrets their parents had kept, whatever lies had shaped their past, the future belonged to them. And their future was just beginning. Epilogue. 2 years later. Lucas. Don't throw sand at your sister. Sophia's voice carried across the beach as she watched their 3-year-old son attempt to help baby Emma build a sandcastle. At 18 months, Emma was more interested in eating the sand than building with it, but Lucas took his big brother duties very seriously. I'm not throwing, Mama. I'm sprinkling. Lucas protested, his dark hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. He had Alexander's eyes but Sophia's stubborn chin, a combination that promised trouble in the years to come. Sprinkling, Alexander repeated, settling beside Sophia on their beach blanket. Where does he learn these words? From his grandfather, probably. Richard's been teaching him to articulate his intentions clearly when he gets in trouble. Alexander laughed, reaching over to adjust Emma's sun hat. Their daughter was a perfect blend of both parents, with Sophia's delicate features and Alexander's strong will. She babbled constantly in a language only Lucas seemed to understand, and she had both grandpas wrapped firmly around her tiny finger. Hard to believe it's been 5 years since that night in the alley, Sophia mused, watching their children play. Best worst night of my life, Alexander agreed, his fingers finding hers on the blanket. Phoenix Rising had become a nationwide organization, with offices in 12 cities and a waiting list of women seeking help. Alexander had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Gray Industries to focus on their charitable foundation, which funded everything from legal aid to job training for women starting over. They'd never looked into Miranda's final claims about their parents. Some truths, they'd decided, were better left buried. Mama. Daddy. Look. Lucas came running toward them, sand flying from his feet. Emmy said my name. They turned to see Emma toddling after her brother, her chubby arms outstretched as she chanted, Lulu. Lulu. She did say your name. Sophia exclaimed, gathering Emma into her arms as Lucas beamed with pride. I'm the best big brother ever, Lucas announced. And the best wingman. Daddy, tell Mama I'm still your wingman. Alexander grinned, ruffling his son's hair. You're definitely still my wingman, buddy. Though I think I'm going to retire from dating now. Good, Lucas said seriously. Because Mama's the best and we're keeping her forever. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sophia leaned against Alexander's shoulder and watched their children chase the waves. Emma squealed with delight every time the water touched her toes, while Lucas tried to catch the foam in his bucket. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night? She asked softly. Every day, Alexander admitted. But then I remember that some things are just meant to be. We were meant to find each other, meant to build this family, meant to turn our worst moments into our greatest blessings. Even the fake engagement? Especially the fake engagement. Best business decision I ever made. Sophia tilted her head up to kiss him, tasting salt and sunshine and promises kept. Around them, their world was perfect, not because it was without pain or struggle, but because they'd chosen to build something beautiful from the broken pieces. Ready to head home? Alexander asked as the children began to show signs of exhaustion. In a minute, Sophia said, wanting to hold on to this moment a little longer. I love watching them discover the world. They're going to be incredible, Alexander said, his voice full of quiet pride. Strong like their mother, stubborn like their father. Trouble like both of us. The best kind of trouble. As they gathered their things and herded two tired children toward the house, Sophia felt that familiar flutter in her chest, the same feeling she'd had in the cathedral when she'd seen Alexander waiting at the altar. Pure joy, uncomplicated and real. Their love story had begun with lies and revenge, with broken hearts and shattered trust. But it had grown into something bigger than either of them had imagined possible. They'd built an empire together, not of money or power, but of love and choice and family forged by decision rather than blood. And watching Lucas help Emma navigate the sandy path while Alexander carried their beach gear and planned tomorrow's adventures, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that their greatest battle had indeed led to their greatest blessing. They were home. They were whole. They were forever. The rest was just the beautiful details of a life well lived. From blood to blessings, Sophia and Alexander rewrote their fate. Which part of their journey hit you the hardest? Comment below and subscribe if this story stole your heart.